Hey YouTube, Jonapan back with another video. Coming at you this time from my new couch. I love it, I love it. If you just watched, it was on my Insta story recently. So it was an early Christmas present from my parents and my grandma, so thank you. It really, actually, this and another present that I got, which is an entertainment unit over there. You'll see it in a future video. They really make this room feel more like a real room and not just like cushions on the ground. But anyway, point of this video is what I mentioned in my last video. So I wanted to talk about this article that I've read about the difference between Western and Japanese communication styles. And the article that I read was actually pretty well done considering the news source. So I guess I'll get into that now. I read this article on Sora News 24, which, if you're familiar with like the online Japanese news sources out there, Sora News 24 is kind of well, let's see. So you have, in terms of like reputation and like editorial quality, you have things like the Nikkei Asian Review, Japan Times, maybe even like the Mainichi Shimbun. Like those are kind of like actual like English language Japanese newspapers, which are, they're like, you know, they're like the New York Times, the Globe and Mail, the whatever. But then you have things like, so there's Japan Today, which is kind of like a Reader's Digest news source sort of, and the comments on Japan Today are a hoot. Like, oh man, if I want to feel disgusted by the people who live in this country, both foreign and national and domestic, that's a great place to look. Oh man, those comments. And the last, so then you have Sora News 24, which is kind of like, it's like half a step above like BuzzFeed, I guess. Because, you know, sometimes BuzzFeed does put out some quality reporting, sometimes, and so, yeah. Anyway, so I read this on Sora News 24, and it was, this article came out like last year, but I guess it's still relevant today. So it was this woman on Twitter, or this person, I believe they're gender fluid now. I believe that's how they are now. They were talking about how they were born in Japan but raised through the like most of their adolescence and a lot of their childhood in Switzerland, and then coming back to Japan as an adult have found it really difficult at times to be in the workforce, because the communication styles can kind of butt heads. And so someone wrote an article about these tweets and kind of their own thoughts on the matter. And so I guess this is my chance to give my own thoughts on the matter as well. So I definitely understand the original tweeter's experience, but I can't say that I've had the same experience because I'm not the same situation. So like that person, they are Japanese, like they're of Japanese heritage, and they were born in Japan, and now they live here again as an adult. And like, I am obviously, I'm foreign born, I'm from Canada, and I came here just as an adult. So I don't have that same, I think the same maybe level of conflict that this person is experiencing, because when people look at me, they're not going to assume I'm Japanese, and they're going to assume that my communication style might be different based on their own stereotypes in their mind, or just based on like the first few sentences that we exchange. They might understand that our communication styles are going to be informed by different values and culture. So basically that's just a long fancy way of saying I'm white, so people treat me differently. But of course, like I just said, I don't want to invalidate that experience. I can see very, very easily how that person's experience goes down, because I have some other friends who are Jets, who are, or even some people who I've met who aren't Jets, who are from another Asian, like East Asian, Southeast Asian country, who when they come to Japan have talked about the level of pressure that they felt to conform to Japanese values, that white, black, Latinx, whatever other ethnicities haven't necessarily felt, because you're immediately clocked as a foreigner versus someone who might initially pass as Japanese. The author goes on to talk about how, you know, reducing things to stereotypes a little bit, talks about how in Japanese culture, communication is meant to be there is one way and everyone agrees with it. And because of that, a lot of common sense is assumed. There's a high level of common sense that's assumed. There's a high level of people expecting you to know what they're talking about just from context. Versus in the West, we have like a low level of context. So we really explain a lot. We tend to explain ourselves and make sure that we're understood. And so the article did a good job of saying that both have their positives and their negatives. They both have opportunities and challenges, because when you do all have a common culture, you can really move things along quickly. You don't need to waste time explaining yourself. But obviously, it's not always the case that everyone understands each other perfectly. And so you can silence voices, and you can really push down a lot of outside ideas. Versus in the West, yep, like we talk, we over-explain ourselves, we say things that are unnecessary, we even can confuse ourselves by how much we over-talk or over-explain things. But on the other side of it, it does a much better job of hearing outside of voices and getting more ideas and more opinions into the mix. How I've noticed this pan out in my own experience, because I have noticed it working in my experience. So the first way that I've seen was in just like the language and the kind of the opening questions that are asked, or the way that questions are asked here. So in English, if you're seeing someone, you say, "Hey, how's it going? Hello, how are you doing?" I would say those are pretty... If you don't think those are common greetings, feel free to comment below. Versus in Japan, questions are a bit... And so that means that they're very open-ended questions. But in Japan, questions like that tend to be a bit more close-ended. Like the most basic one is like, "O genki desu ka?" Like, "Are you well?" So it kind of makes this assumption of everyone has the same understanding of what well means. And it's a yes or no question. It's not an open-ended. And I know that 95% of the time when we say, "How's it going?" "Hey, how's it going?" we expect the answer to be, "Oh, I'm fine," or "Hey, I'm all right." We don't expect to get a life story from someone when we ask them how they're doing. But it still leaves the option open. There's at least a wider variety. You can say like, "Oh, I'm great," or "Oh, I'm all right," or "I'm fine," or "I don't want to talk about it." There's a wider range of I would say socially accepted answers. Versus in Japanese, it's like, are you well? "Genki desu ka?" "Hai, genki." Or like, "Genki janai." So you can say yes or no. You can't disagree, but it's a much more limited scope, because it's like genki, well, covers a whole host of emotions and states of being. And even like, oh man, this messes me up all the time when I ask my students, like, "Oh, how was lunch?" And they kind of like, they give me this blank face. I think because the word "how" is a little difficult, but also because it's a general open-ended question. I think the Japanese way of communication isn't to start so open-ended. It's to start a bit more focused and maybe elaborate from there. Like a bottom-up versus a top-down approach to communication. So, like, when they give me the blank stare, I'll be like, "Was it delicious?" Like, "Oishikatta?" Because that starts with a much more focused question, and that is what they understand. And when people ask me questions, like they ask me that same way, like, "Was it delicious?" Not "How was the food?" And obviously Japan does have a way to ask "How was something?" But what I've found is that it's more common to be asked a yes or no question, and then you go on from there. Which is interesting. It's just a different way of doing it. But I mean, if you have the full conversation with someone, it gets to the same end goal, really. Anyway, way number 2 that I've seen it work out in my life. So occasionally I have to do project work, like I'm working on this English mini camp, like half-day camp kind of thing for the students, and what level of detail to go into is always a challenge for me. Again, because as I said earlier, because I'm white, because I've come here specifically from another country to fill a certain temporary role as an intercultural exchange person. My coworkers tend to be a lot more, I'd say, generous with their own communication styles. But it's definitely an ongoing learning process of how much detail to communicate. So I have to make like, you know, outlines or like rough plans for the days or things like that. And I'm still learning like how much detail do I need to communicate, how often do I need to communicate. The chain of command is different, but that's not really the point of today's topic. That's what I struggle with, is like the level of what's expected to be known commonly. So like, for example, if I mention an activity, like if it's something that we've done before, do I need to explain it again? Or can I just like leave it, even though it's like something that in my mind it's like I should explain it again, because if we're putting it on paper it should be laid out thoroughly and in details. But as soon as I kind of mention an activity in name, the person I'm working with will be like, oh great, yeah, okay, perfect. And it's like, okay. Okay. So it's meant that I've had to ask a lot of follow-up questions, which in itself is a very Western way of communicating, because it's putting the onus on my conversation partner to confirm that they know what I know, that I know what they know. Yeah, but it can be disorienting when you have a very high level of common knowledge that's expected to be in place. So yeah, it's hard, but I'm getting through it. Anyway, I guess that's all the thoughts I had on that topic. If you have any ideas of your own, please leave a comment below. But in the meantime, I have some Kit Kats today. Boop, boop, boop. So I've got, let's see, what do I have today? I have chocolate orange. Chocolate orange. Custard pudding. And I think this one is like just mandarin, or just like, yeah, clementine kind of thing. So I guess I'll just give you some little ketchup. Yeah, oh shoot. Is that... I'm out of time. So, as you just saw, my memory card ran out of space, and I deleted some like old stuff to make up some more room, and I recorded it, and then it looks like it didn't save. So when I went to like move it onto my computer, it wasn't there. My like eating reaction for the Kit Kats. And then I was like, well, this sucks. So then I put the memory card back in and deleted a couple of videos, and then I realized as soon as I deleted one that it was the video that I'd taken. So here's my synopsis of the Kit Kats that I ate. The chocolate orange one was excellent. Tasted like a Terry's chocolate orange. Like, it was so good. The mandarin clementine one was awful. Like, awful. Like, one of the worst Kit Kats flavors I've had. Like, actively bad. Like, it tasted like, it tasted like the inside of a Halloween mask smells. Like, I'm just remembering, it made me think of, like, I had a Scream mask. I was, like, the Scream guy one year when that was, like, the scary costume to have. And I remember the smell of the inside of that mask, and it tasted like that, which was disgusting. And then the last was the caramel pudding, which is good, actually. It tasted, I don't know, like kind of like, it wasn't caramel pudding, it was custard pudding, but it tasted kind of caramelly, like, kind of like flan-y, I don't know, the kind of like Japanese pudding flavor. So we had a high, a medium, and a low. Yeah, anyway. Sorry that you couldn't see my live reactions. I made some great faces, but there'll be many more Kit Kat flavors to try in the future, so I still haven't decided on a thing that I want to say. Catch you in the next video. I guess I can say that. Catch you in the next video.